This is the darkest day in our city's history. The actions of a single person shattered our collective sense of safety.
A growing memorial in East Vancouver at the site of an unprecedented tragedy where a vehicle plowed into a crowd of festival goers Saturday evening.
The tragedy, a heartbreaking end to a day that was meant to celebrate the Filipino culture.
And we will come together out of this catastrophe with the support and the love from the broad community, from all of you.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. We begin with the tragedy that has shocked our province, and we want to warn you right off the top, the subject matter will be disturbing to many viewers.
At least 11 people have been killed and many more injured by a driver who drove an SUV at high speed into the crowd at a Filipino street festival on Saturday. We have team coverage for you tonight, including what we know about the victims and the suspect, as well as the security concerns being raised.
And we'll start with Grace Key, who is live near the scene right now with details about how this all unfolded. Grace?
Yeah, we're just here on East 43rd and St. George, where behind me here you can see this is still a very active police scene. It's still behind yellow police tape, the food vendors' trucks, evidence markers still here. As we were canvassing the area earlier, I ran into a woman. She was coming out of a car in crutches. She said she was just too upset to speak to us, but said she was injured in the festival. A few hours later, I ran into a man who was coming out of his vehicle. He said this was nothing in comparison. He said his wife was killed yesterday. We spoke with many witnesses today who described the horrific scene.
I heard a loud bang.
Bang, bang, bang.
Boom, boom, boom.
And I saw the car pass by. I said, what the hell?
Taste of Malaysia was just wrapping up after the Lapu Lapu festival when a black Audi SUV came barreling through a large crowd.
Yeah, then we see from the window, we see all over the body lying down. People screaming.
We look at the window, there's a body.
Yeah.
Her body was lying on the ground.
Yeah.
We saw her leg and her arm, she wasn't moving. We know she's already dead. And then they tried to go back at the back door and there's another body.
Another body lying
at
down.
the back of our truck. And then
people injured.
And then we saw people at the back of our truck. They were like really injured, and one guy was like holding his leg.
This is the darkest day in our city's history.
Vancouver police say 11 people are dead, ranging in age from 5 to 65 years old. The death toll could rise with dozens more injured.
While I'm not prepared to speak about the potential motive, I can now say with confidence that the evidence in this case does not lead us to believe this was an act of terrorism. I can also tell you that the person we have in custody does have a significant history of interactions with police and healthcare professionals related to mental health.
The driver can be heard saying, "I'm sorry," in video circulating on social media as a crowd yells at him. So far, 30-year-old Kai G. Adam Low is facing 8 murder charges.
And we thought this was strange. It's very reckless to be driving so fast when there are so many people around.
One neighbor was walking back from the grocery store when he saw the SUV turn onto his block.
He turned left onto our street and started driving down this way, but very immediately he made a U-turn.
The SUV parked off-street, and then a minute later, tragedy struck.
And then I heard this banging sounds that I can't imagine. I've seen people flying, 1 or 2, right in front of me, like 7 feet away from me. And then I thought it was just like a pure, car accident, but it was not. He accelerated again, 2 to 3, food trucks. I've seen my people flying. There was one lady being twisted, and then he accelerated again.
Yeah, Grace, the interim chief mentioned a number of interactions this suspect had with police. What are we learning about the suspect's last interaction with police just before this happened?
Yeah, so Vancouver police are saying that their last interaction with him was just the day before the festival. They aren't providing a lot of details, but they say it was nothing really that warranted any hospitalization or voluntary care. Chris?
Right, Grace, thanks very much for that. We'll check in with you later on in the program.
As Grace mentioned, the suspect, now identified as 30-year-old Kai G. Adam Low of Vancouver, is now facing multiple charges. And while police say they're not aware of a specific motive, they indicate Lowe does have a history of mental health issues. Catherine Urquhart has more on that part of the story.
Smile! Smile, A crowd of horrified and angry bystanders confronts a man believed to be murder suspect Kai G. Adam Lowe after pulling the man from his SUV.
Smile!
Witnesses demand answers from the 30-year-old as they hold him for police. He doesn't respond.
Hit and run of a car, black SUV.
For now, Lowe faces 8 murder charges. Police say they've had numerous interactions with Lowe, and sources have told Global News that those interactions far exceed 50. At an afternoon press conference, Mayor Ken Sim says change is desperately needed.
This has been going on for far too long and throughout many administrations. We need that mandatory care faster. We need more of it, and we need it faster. We cannot take a government approach to this. Lives are on the line.
It's time to look at our legislation, both reviewing it and seeing if there's something more that we should be adding so that we can really deal with the crisis that we have on our hands here.
Premier David Eby expressed condolences to the Filipino community, but did not indicate any action he might take.
I'm counting on police. I'm counting on our justice system to get the answers that we need. And as we get those answers, we'll take the actions that are necessary.
Kai G. Adam Lowe remains in custody pending his next court appearance. Meanwhile, questions mount as to the full extent of his mental health history and what actions were or weren't taken by authorities. Catherine Urquhart, Global News.
And like Catherine says, the tragedy is raising questions about whether more could have or should have been done to prevent it.
Police say they conducted a threat assessment prior to the festival and determined it wasn't necessary to deploy vehicle barricades. Sarah McDonald joins us now. Sarah, last night's shocking incident might change things.
That's right. So Vancouver police are calling this tragedy a watershed moment for the city and the way security is handled going forward. Both the mayor of Vancouver and the premier acknowledging today we could see changes in policy and protocol in some capacity because of what happened here last night. Among the many questions still unanswered in the wake of this weekend's mass casualty event is how the victims were left so vulnerable to a speeding vehicle and its driver on an otherwise quiet side street in South Vancouver.
We can't predict one-offs, and we certainly don't want to create a police state.
And it's a question Vancouver police and the city's mayor insist had a simple explanation that seemed to make sense until Saturday.
So last year there were 0 interactions with police at this festival. It was a family-friendly cultural celebration involving kids. And we wanted to maintain that based on that information and that threat assessment. We don't want to cage everybody up at every event in the city of Vancouver.
Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim announcing Sunday he's launched a review into how the city secures all events going forward.
I've directed a full review of our event safety measures, including barriers, traffic control, and safety protocols.
Those barriers, blocking access to so-called soft targets, have become all too familiar to British Columbians at large events over the years. Dump trucks, cruisers, and other blockades, utilized at roughly 8 of the more than 2,000 events held across the city every year. From Western Canada's largest Pride Parade to cultural celebrations like Vaisakhi, and at major events drawing massive crowds like the Taylor Swift concert.
Situations like this can happen anywhere. This whole team here is completely committed to not just making events safer, but our city safer.
A Quebec-based company has developed cutting-edge technology that could help with that, specifically designed to stop drivers with sinister motives.
Because basically this is the easiest weapon anybody could have. As soon as you have able to drive and have a vehicle, it could be weaponized.
Something we now know could have saved lives here on Saturday, even though by all accounts there was no indication it was ever needed.
And Sarah, that's a point police are really hammering home, that there were no red flags that they saw prior to last night.
That was the point emphasized repeatedly multiple times today from morning to afternoon by Vancouver Police and the Mayor of Vancouver, who maintain there was no reason to believe this event or the people here would be targeted in any way. Also pointing out that most of the event was on the grounds of John Oliver behind me, which, as you can see, is not accessible to vehicle traffic. The only place that was the street behind me. And the reason for that is because the food trucks and the vendors had to access this street. Sophie, Chris.
All right, thanks for that. Sarah McDonald reporting live tonight.
Canada's leaders are also weighing in on this. Keith Baldry joins us now with more on how it's changing the tone on this, the final day of the campaign, Keith.
Yeah, the tragedy obviously casting a giant shadow and a pall over the campaign. It's not just one campaign. All leaders today responding to last night's horrific events. Campaign rallies were canceled today in all parties. Campaign events were changed. In fact, all leaders met with members of the Filipino community. Pillars of the community also attending churches as well. That continues to, I think, dominate their activities tonight and probably sometime part of Election Day itself. We caught up with all three leaders as they addressed last night's horrific event.
The strength and the resilience of the Filipino-Canadian community is exemplified by the Tagalog term Bayanihan. It captures the Filipino spirit of community, of cooperation and unity to achieve a common goal. And it's this spirit upon which we must draw in this incredibly difficult time.
I hope that we can pray for those who've been lost and for those who survive in mourning their loved ones, their brothers, sisters, daughters, sons, mothers, fathers. All of them will have a deep hole in their hearts today. And we will try to fill it with the love of the entire country.
There was kids there. There was kids there. There was families there. Again, I met they were so filled with joy. And to have an event celebrating the resilience, be struck with this horrific event, I don't have the words to describe the sorrow that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, a lot of people feel that, Keith. Premier David Eby also spoke about the tragedy today and was asked about British Columbians who feel, and there may be a growing number of them, who feel like they are not safe on the streets.
Yeah, this issue came up a number of times with reporters today. You heard the Premier earlier in the show talking about he's going to do whatever needs to be done after consulting with police. But he also says British Columbians have a right to be angry.
British Columbians are right to be angry. Here's a community that has done nothing but give, has been overlooked in terms of their contributions to our province, to this city, to this country, is finally having an event where their culture is upheld and celebrated, and it's destroyed by a single individual.
So to further illustrate the awkwardness of performing politics in a traditional sense right now, I don't want to talk about the campaign, but here at the BC Legislature, the House resumes sitting tomorrow morning after a one-week Easter break, but it's going to sit at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, have a moment of silence for the victims and the Filipino community, and then it will adjourn for the rest of the day. Also today, for those watching in the Capital Region, at 7 p.m. tonight, on the front steps of the Legislature, there will be a candlelight vigil for the victims, and everyone's welcome to come down.
All right, good to know that. Keith, thank you.
Well, reaction and condolences are pouring in from around the globe. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. releasing this statement today. I am completely shattered to hear about the terrible incident during a Lapu Lapu Day block party in Vancouver. We are one with the families of the victims and the Filipino community in Vancouver during this difficult time.
And King Charles III released a statement as well, saying both my wife and I were profoundly saddened to learn of the dreadful attack and utterly tragic loss of life in Vancouver, which took place as the Filipino community came together to mark the celebration of one of their most special festivals. Our hearts and prayers go out to all those whose lives have been shattered by such a desperate tragedy, and we send our deepest possible sympathy at a most agonizing time for so many Canadians.
We are just above Fraser Street, where the stretch of road remains closed between East 41st to 47th for a police investigation. You can travel east and westbound on 41st, and there is a growing vigil where people have been dropping off flowers and notes of support. Select Sussex Insurance and make a difference when you renew your auto plan online. Select your neighborhood Sussex Insurance location when prompted, and help support Diabetes Canada exclusively at Sussex Insurance. In Global One, I'm Barbara Beam.
The official death toll from last night's violence stands at 11 people, but police say with dozens more injured, that number could rise in the coming weeks.
At this point, the VPD say they range in age from 5 to 65. A code orange was declared last night, with patients taken to 9 different hospitals across the region. Some victims have yet to be identified and their families notified. But mourning has begun. St. Mary the Virgin South Hills saw more than 350 people in attendance this morning. Church officials say the overwhelming response is more than warranted.
This shouldn't come as a surprise because it's what happened is not a Filipino community issue. It is an issue for all of us here in Vancouver, here in BC, and Canada. When I look at it, it's a massacre. You say it bluntly, it's a massacre. We don't even know what is the current figure of those who died. Some are in the hospital. We don't know who made it there. And because no names have been released yet, we don't know. It could be our friend, our godchildren, our aunties. We don't.
Mourners have been bringing flowers and lighting candles in support of the victims. They will be moved to a growing memorial set up at 41st and Fraser later tonight.
And we want you to know that a 24-hour assistance center has been set up at the Douglas Park Community Center at 801 West 22nd Avenue in Vancouver. VPD officers and victim services personnel are all available to help anyone who has not been able to contact a loved one who was at the Lapu Lapu Festival. Victim services are also available 24 hours a day by calling or texting this number, 1-800-563-0808.
Canadian Blood Services say there has been a strong show of support by Vancouverites to donate blood in light of this mass casualty event. Most of the appointments in Vancouver for the next week have been filled, but there are appointments available around the province. It is urging people to continue to donate to replenish the supply in the weeks to come. If you want to help, you can go to blood.ca.
Of course, the community is rallying this afternoon, gathering for a vigil to mourn and to support one another through this tragedy.
Our Emily Lazatin has more on how the Filipino community has been coming together to support one another. Emily.
So I think I've been asking people today how they've been coping, and I'm getting a lot of well, I'm angry, I'm sad, but I don't have any other outlet, and the only outlet right now is coming together as a family and coming together as a community. And I just want to show you that is what's happening right now at Kensington Community Centre. So a lot of these folks here were up at 41st and Fraser. They walked down here. Some of them were inside before. That's because Mayor Ken Sim and Premier David Eby did say a few words to people. It was a place to be safe. Cameras weren't allowed, and then everybody came outside. So there are people within the Indigenous community speaking, the Filipino community speaking. There is a table of flowers there. You probably can't see through the crowd, but it's just full of bouquets and teddy bears and messages. So there will be vigils and prayers here eventually, but right now people are just listening to dignitaries speak. I have a feeling that this crowd will be here for a while. Now, if there's one thing I've heard, to quote somebody today, they said this community, they are strong, they are vibrant, and they are faithful.
There are no words. Just the sounds of tears and cries, sighs of disbelief.
It was fun. People were dancing. People were meeting family. I met family who I haven't seen for years.
And burning candles in memory of the lives lost.
And now it came to this heartbreak.
Flowers and stuffed animals symbolize victims of all ages.
I do have friends who have family that have been injured. And I do know them, so it's very sad.
The feeling of safety stripped away in just seconds.
Waking up today, I just, I felt I needed to, place some flowers here.
We never really imagined that it could happen here.
A community devastated and scarred from the tragic events on Lapu Lapu Day, an event recognized just 2 years ago in celebration of a Filipino hero who fought against Spanish colonization. The block party rich in history, culture, and food. Local and international performers take the stage. And for Filipinos, it's a chance to be seen, recognized, and to share the joy.
We are collectively shattered, but we are coming together as a community.
Memorial sites in the area grew bigger by the hour. Church services were dedicated to victims, families, and the injured, and a vigil held late afternoon. The message: no one should suffer alone.
Filipinos sometimes forget to ask for help. Sometimes the best way to help yourself is to help others.
The story of Lapu Lapu is one of resilience.
We just have to be strong and be together.
In deep pain and grief, in the face of adversity, there is community.
Maybe we're not blood related, but they're family in the heart.
Unthinkable. Emily, we've heard people are donating blood, which is great to hear, but others are asking about financial donations. What are you being told that the community needs right now?
Well, so, I'm sure when in the days to come, maybe victims will come up, there'll be GoFundMe pages. But as far as the official, Lapu Lapu Day event, if people want to give donations, what I'm told from RJ Aquino from Filipino BC and one of the organizers is that right now they do appreciate the outpouring of support, but the organization at this time is not set up for financial donations. But once we do get that information, we will, of course, get that out to our viewers. I know we have a lot of generous viewers, but here, right now, there is a massive show of force, not only for the Filipino community, just for the wider community at whole affected by this, Sophie. And we will be here throughout the evening, and we'll check in a bit later. I'll send it back to you.
All right. Thanks very much for that, Emily. Emily Lazatin reporting in East Van tonight.
All right, we have Jason Pires with us now. Jason, you were at the event yesterday, deeply personal connection to it. Obviously, to the Filipino community. Maybe for people who don't know, describe what this festival is all about and what you experienced before this.
Yeah, I was honored to be part of the inaugural event. Last year it rained, but it definitely dampened the spirit of the Filipinos last year. Huge crowds. And so this year with the weather forecast, people were just so amped up, the coordinators and the volunteers, that, this is going to be the best year yet, at bigger crowds. And it was upbeat. I got there around 10:30, and the crowd just started growing. We had some footage of the block party, just massive crowds. Look at it, and just incredible. Classic festival atmosphere, checking out the crafts, the performers, the food. And then in the evening, look at this crowd. They actually added this portion at the school at John Oliver, then another stage, and there's federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. And then just half an hour later, all this joy from the day, a beautiful day, just shattered in an instant to evil. And it's just beyond comprehension. You do not equate Vancouver with the mass casualty event, but this is what is reality.
Yeah. You have deep roots in the Filipino community. Your mom is Filipino. I know you have a lot of Filipino aunties and uncles, and Emily Lazatin as well. And you know, Lapu Lapu Day is about resilience, as Emily said. What have you been hearing from those in the Filipino community today?
Just, first of all, just so thankful for all the support. It's been overwhelming. And as you know, I think everyone has a connection to a Filipino person, whether it's a colleague or a friend or a teacher. And we know that dominant in the healthcare industry, the hospitality sector, these kind of things, caregivers for seniors, caregivers for children, hardworking, always humble, but also a sense of pride. We call it Pinoy pride. And going into the weekend, it was so strong, that pride. And then it ends with anguish and heartbreak. But I could tell you that that sense of pride and unity is probably stronger than ever, as we see by the turnout at Kensington. So I know there's a lot of appreciation for the sport all around the province. It's wonderful to see. I know there's a growing memorial at the Cultural Center in Victoria, where my parents are involved, and I know they're so appreciative of the flowers, and there'll be a vigil, as Keith mentioned, at the legislature. So people are coming together, and the Filipino people will get through this.
Yeah, no doubt they will. And a lot of support from the wider community, too.
All right. Thanks very much, Jason.
Okay.